The left wants to turn all men into femboys. Oh yeah, they do. Hello everyone, this is Mr. Obvious, and today on the internet, we've got to talk about femboys. Okay, it is that time of year, right? So many of you probably heard the story of a 16-year-old boy who was given estrogen for a behavioral disorder while at the LA County Juvenile Hall. There's been a lawsuit, and the boy developed breasts. He had to get surgery to remove the breasts, and now he's mentally scarred and traumatized. His father says that he won't leave his room, and that he's scared of the world. They gave a young boy, pumped him full of female hormones, destroyed his body, destroyed his mind, and completely and utterly wrecked him. And nobody knows why, but I think I do. Now, like all real men, I love femboy hooters. Oof, especially that one right there. Now, some people would call these traps, but as a straight man, when I see a trap, I turn 360 degrees and walk away. There's nothing gay about that. But for real, folks, whether you prefer femboy hooters or tomboy outback or even iGoth IHOP, what's really important here is that everyone has a choice. You can choose to go to femboy hooters or you can go to tomboy outback. And the femboys can choose to be a femboy or just be a regular man. Everyone consents. And that's what it's all about. But what they did to this 16-year-old boy was not consent. They forced him to take these treatments. They threatened him. They said, if you don't do what we say, we're going to send you to prison. Here you can see on the Los Angeles Times, a 16-year-old boy being held at Los Angeles County Juvenile Hall developed enlarged breasts after he was prescribed estrogen to treat a behavioral disorder, a move that baffled doctors, who said the treatment defied all medical logic, according to a lawsuit filed last month. So he was diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder, ODD, and arrested. So the Times revealed that his testosterone levels were slightly high when the doctor diagnosed him, prescribed doses of estrogen in order to treat his slightly high testosterone. Now, nobody knows why they did this. Some people have postulated that it was a mad science experiment, but I believe I know. Other commentators, like Tim Pool, have said things like, I think it was some forced experiment to see what would happen if you did a gender reassignment on an unwilling participant. I think he misses the plot completely. They didn't do this to do an experiment about gender reassignment. They did this to destroy a man and toxic masculinity. You see, we have to talk about feminism and far left ideology. You see, these extreme ideologies believe in the concept known as toxic masculinity, and if I had to guess, they were trying to cure him of this toxic masculinity by pumping him full of female hormones, which, mind you, can leave a man infertile, destroy his body, and destroy everything he is. Here you can see on tolerance.org. Oh, that's hilarious, since they aren't very tolerant. What do we mean when we say toxic masculinity? Now, this is a person who made headlines when they talked about toxic masculinity. Lots of people criticized them, made fun of them, and laughed at them. So they made this article, and they said, well, let me explain what I think toxic masculinity is. Before we engage students in conversations about masculinity or femininity, toxic or otherwise, we should begin with a few ideas about gender. Researchers have shown that there is very little difference between the brains of men and women. Wrong! Research has actually shown that there's an incredible difference between the male and female brain. The connectome, a way of mapping connectivity in the brain, revealing significant differences between men and women. Now let's just take a look here. The brain on the left is a male brain. The brain on the right is a female brain. Let's read. Typical male brain. Most connections run between the front and the back, parts of the same brain hemisphere, which could account for the better spatial skills and motor muscle control in men. Now the female brain. Many more neural connections go from side to side, across the left and right hemispheres of the brain. Scientists say this could account for women's better verbal skills and intuitive abilities. Aha! So here you can see real science showing you that there's a difference between male and female brains. The way they connect, the way they communicate, and what they're good at are completely different. It has often been a stereotype that men are better at motor control, reading maps, spatial reasoning, and women are better at verbal skills and intuition. Now, these left-wing activists will tell you that there's no such thing. Stereotypes are all false. Men and women are exactly the same. But as you can see, they are clearly not. These images show you that there are very real physical, biological, and genetic differences between men and women. Not only that, they've done studies on homosexual brains, and you know what they found? Men who are homosexual have brains that look more like a female brain, and vice versa. Women who are lesbians have brains that look more like male brains. So there's something very real and something very tangible about gender differences between men and women, and even sexuality. So this is where the left-wing ideology goes absolutely insane. Here you can see, while gender identity is a deeply held feeling of being male or female, or another gender. What other gender? Did I miss the memo or something? Hideyoshi is the only other gender I know. People of different genders often act differently, not because of biological characteristics, but because of rigid societal norms created around femininity and masculinity. And there it is. The insane left-wing ideology that is behind all of this, behind the feminization of the Western male. And believe me, folks, it is happening. The idea that there's no differences between men and women is wrong. It's not true. We know for a fact that testosterone and estrogen have very different effects on the body. Otherwise, men would not grow breasts and become different when given female hormones. Likewise, women would not become more aggressive when given testosterone. So for these feminists, and believe me, they are out there. They're out of school, out of their gender studies classes. You know, I've said for years that affirmative action and letting people who didn't deserve to go to university is going to lead to a generation of crackpots. You've got all these extremists in universities being brainwashed by the regressive left to believe things like there's no differences between men and women, or that masculinity is toxic, or that men are evil and must be cured. All of these crackpots who studied gender studies, many others who became doctors, they're out there now, and they're experimenting on your sons, on our boys, and they're forcing them to become women. Now, the feminization of the Western man has been going on for a long time. Here you can see on Psychology Today, feminizing boys as we masculine girls. And this guy talks about something he's noticed, that something is wrong. But here's the funny part. For years, the left and feminists have been pushing the idea that if only men would act more like girls, they would be more successful, have better behavior, and be better, be less toxic. That's a sexist idea. And I just want to make that clear. The idea of toxic masculinity is sexist. But here's a problem. Making men and women less masculine is actually a bad thing. Here you can see. The problem for boys and men whose masculinity is being subject to attack is that many of the studies have shown that both men and women who scored higher on masculinity than femininity scale were more likely to have higher self-esteem. The original thinking by Bem and others was that the most highly successful people would be androgynous, defined as scoring above the median on both masculinity and femininity. So it was surprising to many that this was often not the case, but rather, scoring higher on masculinity was frequently the best predictor of success. In other words, the more masculine you are, generally speaking, the more successful you are. Because guess what? Like everything else in life, testosterone has its pros and cons. Testosterone makes you aggressive, confident, strong, willing, driven. You go out there, you succeed, you win, you fight, you protect, you serve. You're a man. You live. You're self-reliant, and you be a leader. So yeah, there's negatives to more aggression, but there can be negatives to anything. Estrogen has its negatives, sure. You're more caring. You're more understanding. You're more able to deal with stress in life. But you're also more emotional. You're less rational. These things happen. These hormones have powerful effects on the body. Just like testosterone makes men aggressive, estrogen makes women emotional. Now, the real sexism here isn't from men, and it's not from toxic masculinity. The real sexism is from the left. Let me explain. Saying that testosterone is bad because it makes people aggressive is sexist. Saying that estrogen is bad because it makes women emotional is also sexist. Neither are bad. Both are important, and men need testosterone like women need estrogen. It's what makes them them. If it wasn't for that, there wouldn't be men, there wouldn't be women, and there wouldn't be humanity. You see, feminism rejects the family unit. They reject the idea that you need a man and a woman to reproduce to make a child. As much as I love those traps, they don't have a womb, and that is huge. So men need women need men, and men are attracted to girly girls, and girls are generally attracted to manly men. Yeah, not everybody. Everyone has their kinks, but usually. Western men are under attack, and they are being feminized. Take a look at this from Vox, a far-left source, so you can't tell me that this is not a good source, because it is. The average sperm count has dropped, but it is still within normal range. So here you can see that in 1973, sperm concentration million/milliliter, 99. In 2011, it was 47. Since the early 1970s, sperm count in Western countries has declined by more than 50%. Men are being feminized. Now, the reasons for this are many. Some of it is due to fitness, stress, but I think a lot of it has to do with pollution and ideology. And you know the crazy thing about this trend is that nobody seems to know why. Take a look at this image. It's testosterone levels in BuzzFeed men. Here you can see Eugene has the highest score at 363. Keith has 259. Zach has 252. And Ned has 212. What do these numbers mean? Well, let me put it this way. An 85-year-old man has testosterone levels on average of 376. Higher than anyone on this list. In other words, Eugene here, and he's the Asian, has the highest testosterone, but it is still far, 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 far lower. I'm going to assume these guys are in their 30s. The average 35 to 44-year-old male has a testosterone level of 668. Holy shit, they're practically female. And looking at these men, they look like soy boys. They look very feminine. They look weak. They kind of look like women. They're like they're a stone's throw away from going full femboy, okay? From going full femboy hooters. Look at these weak men. I believe that this is all a result of the feminization of the Western male, and I find it absolutely disturbing. It's not just a system now. Now they're pumping hormones into unwilling teenagers and destroying their lives. But that, my friends, is merely the obvious. Well, that's all for now, folks. What do you think about this story? Be sure to let me know down below in the comment section. As always, if you like the work I do and want to support the channel, you can join me on Patreon or Subscribestar. Joining will give you access to a private Discord server, and yes, I am on there. And lastly, the best thing you can do for this channel is simply to share the content. Share my videos if you like them. If you don't, that's cool too. Anyhow, thanks for watching. This has been Mr. Obvious, and I'll see you all next time.